Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be quickly wrapping up the semifinals that just took place for the Women's Euros. We're going to briefly analyze those two games and most importantly talk about the two teams heading to Wembley for the final here on She Scores Bangers. If you don't know already, it's going to be England taking on Germany at Wembley on Sunday the 31st for the final game of the Women's Euros. England had to come up against Sweden in the semi-finals, which they executed the job very, very well, scoring 4 and conceding absolutely none. Yes, the scoreline was in fact 4-0 for England. Going into that game, Sweden had a few players recovering from COVID. A few of the main starting players having missed the last game because of COVID. And during that campaign leading up to the semi-final, we saw them struggle a fair amount to kind of convert a ton of attacks into goals. Also saw their defense line, which is very well known to be very, very solid in the back, to be in trouble a few times. In the last major competition, which was the Olympics, Sweden was able to get that second spot and win silver. And they were also ranked second by FIFA, so it's not a team you want to underestimate despite a fair amount of doubts going into that game. England, on the other hand, was very much challenged against Spain. In fact, they were only 6 minutes away from being knocked out of the competition. But the immense amount of persistence, resilience, and most importantly, discipline that they have been able to show us are a trio that can beat any team on a very good day. Now, what this game really did show us is England takes a fair amount of time to get started. They are very, very slow starters, which made them very vulnerable and allowed Sweden to really play the Swedish football that we're used to seeing. Sweden was able to send in plenty of creative attacks, find very good pockets and spaces, and pretty much stretch out the England squad how they wanted to. In fact, putting Lucy Bronze in situations that she doesn't necessarily feel comfortable in, putting her in positions where she needs to play dangerous football, you could say. Sweden came very close a ridiculous amount of times, hitting the crossbar, and Mary Earps made sure that she showed up for the challenge, saving very, very hard shots. England was also losing possession in the middle. Sweden was able to high press them, and so it was a very, very good technical and tactical challenge between the two teams, especially in that first 30 minutes. After that 30-minute interval was done, England woke up and it just went downhill from there for Sweden. Lauren Hemp favored kind of cutting in the middle and connecting with either Frank Kirby, Ellen White, or Beth Mead, whoever was really available for her, and was having some really good threatening attacks. Some very off positioning by the Swedish defense allowed Beth Mead to get that first goal right before the first half ended. Now, this was not very ideal for Sweden because they had a ton of chances in the middle. It was very much them in control going forwards in the first 30 minutes, and they were not able to capitalize on a single shot. And Beth Mead scoring, which also was an incredible shot, shifting that momentum over to them going into the second half, felt really good for the English. Second half starts, and before you even know it, Lucy Bronze was able to get her name on the score sheet this time. Beth Mead apparently is not just able to score goals, but also provide assists, which is exactly what she did. She crossed in a very, very good corner that just connected perfectly with Lucy Bronze. A lot of players were left unmarked. It just felt very sloppy defending from Sweden. Again, things we're not really used to seeing. Obviously, when that took place, Sweden had to have a few substitutions come on. You had Johanna Andersson come on, Jakobsen leave, and Ellen Goodall also leave the pitch. And obviously, Serena being Serena, she had to bring in her own substitutes by bringing on Alessia Russo. And really, all it took her was a few minutes to get an incredible backheel goal, which, by the way, I'm still not over. It's not just a backheel goal, but it's a backheel goal that nutmegs the goalkeeper. I mean, where have you seen that? For a young player to pull that off, you need to have a ton of confidence in yourself and the football that you play, and that's definitely one thing you see radiating out of the England squad. You could say the same thing about the Georgia Stanway goal. I mean, who would pull that in front of Spain in a quarter-final extra-time game? Again, you need to have a ton of confidence in yourself. Sweden, understandably, was very frustrated. They were picking up a lot of fouls. They'd have one or two breakout attacks here and there, but I think mentally they were defeated. Who wouldn't be defeated when you 3-0 down in the semi-finals? On top of that, poor goalkeeping allowed Frank Kirby to get that fourth, and when you're 4-0 down, the game is pretty much wrapped up. I think the Swedish are not only just disappointed to leave the competition, but they're probably very upset to leave with that scoreline, because I don't think it really reflects how they performed in that game, if that makes sense. I would say they performed the best 30 minutes that they have been able to perform this entire competition. In that first half, we really got to see Sweden again, but when that momentum shifts over to your opposition and your center backs become very sloppy in defending, a lot of positioning is just off and things you shouldn't be committing at a semi-final game. You start conceding more goals, you start giving a ton of more chances to the opposition. It just kind of slips out of your hand. England made them look like a mediocre team, even though they're not a mediocre team, and so it's not a great look. I feel for a lot of players who are probably at the end of the tunnel for their career. You could look at a lot of these young bright players that Sweden had on the bench and was able to make some very good substitution impacts previously in their games throughout this tournament. Benison, I would say, is a very bright player for them. I think even you could have made the argument she should have been a starter for some of these games. Their camp was hit pretty badly with COVID. A lot of these starting 11 players had to be in and out continuously because of testing positive. The Lionesses, 4 different goal scorers, 4 different goals. Serena Wiegman, the bench is looking bright. These young players are looking good. The experienced players are also showing to be tough. The last 3 major competitions, she has been able to take whatever team she's managing into that final. The Dutch into the World Cup finals, which they unfortunately lost against the US, taking that same squad into the Euros final and winning that, and now going to Wembley with England. It's hard not to praise what that woman is doing. England by no means are going to have an easy opposition to go up against because Germany are going to be the ones standing in front of them. Alex Popp just cannot stop. The forward, who is now tied with the most amount of goals for Beth Mead in the competition, Alex Popp, scored a brace against France, which sealed the deal for them to go into the final. This game was definitely high press versus high press, and it was who was going to make the first mistake and how the opposition was able to capitalize on that. It was a game of very small margins that both teams had to be concentrated and focused for the entirety of the game, whether that be 90 minutes, 120 minutes. Germany's strengths are obviously building from the middle. France's strengths are obviously building from the wings. Ziani on one of the wings being absolutely brutal the last few games. On the other wing, you saw Karchawi and Cascarino having a lot of good, successful link-up plays as well. The possession and marking nature of how both teams press very high requires a ton of team effort, and that's really what we saw here. It was not so much individual brilliance, it was collective brilliance from both teams. If your forwards are pressing high, your midfield has to follow, and so does your defense line. Germany and France were both pressing so high. We saw so many midfield duels and battles. It was such a joy to watch. It was so physical. It was such intense high play. One team was losing possession here but regained it here. The other team was losing possession here and they gained it here. So it really was who was going to be the first midfielder, player, or whoever it was to make the first mistake. France committed the first mistake by not marking Alex Popp in the box, which is a terrible idea. She got an incredible strike in the 40th minute, putting the Germans 1-0 up. It did not take long for France to equalize and get a goal themselves through Diani. The goal was not given to Diani. She took the shot. It hit the crossbar, and as the German goalkeeper was diving, it kind of hit her back and bounced back into the net. So it was a weird bouncing back, but it was very much an effort by Diani to get that equalizer. What Germany was very successful in was really shutting down and double marking Diani anytime she got the ball. And with France having a ton of quality, they were able to find other ways to press forward against Germany. But the defensive discipline that Germany was able to show and portray is scary. Going into the second half, I think it was going to be a very similar timeline in terms of, again, who was going to make a mistake, how is the opposition going to react, as well as how long is this intensity going to go on for. The fast play and just the overall ruthlessness and physical battles that these two teams were playing is exhausting. Which team was able to provide these substitutions, these fresh legs, to recover from a very fast, intense 50-45 minutes? Germany has absolutely world-class players that are very good in free kick taken. The first one that comes to mind for me is obviously Lena McGill. Alex Popp even stepped up for one of them and came very, very close. So Germany is not a team that you want to be giving fouls, and you have to be very cautious in a lot of the defending that you do. This was being a little bit more careless with these duels they were engaging in, and Germany was doing a spectacular job by frustrating the French to commit these fouls. And when momentum shifts over to Germany and you have Alex Popp still on the field, then you probably expect another Alex Popp goal, and that's exactly what happened. A very, very good header. I mean, Popp is so good in the air. She had to get a header goal in this game, obviously. Really kind of sealing the deal for Germany over here. Now, I don't want to say a sob story here, but I feel like this game really, really missed Amandine Henry. In my eyes, I think Amandine Henry has some of the best pressing positioning in current football. She decently neutralizes her sector and brings in a ton of energy in the midfield. Very, very dynamite in her movement, very, very dynamite in moving possession in places the team needs it to be in. Right now, when you're 2-1 down against Germany, this is exactly when you need your experienced players to step up. But Amandine Henry is not on your bench because you have made some questionable decisions, and this one player that could have very much possibly equalized the game is not present. And this is not to undermine what France has been able to do. I think they had a very, very good showing this competition. They breezed by their group, and they also lost Katoto, which I think is one of the most dynamite number 9s we have in the game currently as well. And France has very good players that can take very long shots, like Cascarino, like Diani, Millard. I mean, everybody. I would have encouraged these players to start cutting into the box or start cutting into the middle directly, whatever kind of cutting in, or just getting yourself in a good position to take a long shot. That's certainly one thing I expected them to come out and do a little bit more in the second half. Unfortunately, we didn't see that. And to leave against Germany in the semifinals is not a terrible result. If I was France right now, I would, again, still reconsider the management. I think that has been the dialogue for the past 7 years, for as long as I can remember. The unsung hero of this game, though, was definitely Lena Oberdorf. She's not a player that oddly finds herself marking the right players or covering tight spaces and interrupting the really crucial parts that she needs to interrupt by chance. It's her vision and IQ of the game that is completely unmatched. She knows exactly where the ball is going next. She knows exactly where the opposition is heading. It's almost like she can predict what the next movement is. And one would say that's something you see in an experienced player. I want to point out that Lena Oberdorf is only 20. You can almost wonder how good will she be in the next few years when she is able to gain that experience and she's able to widen that IQ and that knowledge and her vision of the game. The stage is set. It's going to be England versus Germany in the final. Germany is the most successful European nation when it comes to the Euros. They have won it 8 times. They have been featured in the final 8 times, so that's 100% winning rate. The two actually met in the 2009 Euros final, where Germany was able to beat England 8-2. That game was also the last time England was in the finals Euros. England clearly doesn't really care much about history. They showed us that in a very obvious manner against Sweden. It's going to be really interesting if Germany is going to go against England with a very similar game plan that they implemented against France. France and England are very similar in the way they build up with the wings, and Germany was very successful in blocking these wings and really suffocating the wingers from doing what they usually do. But England was tested in a very similar manner against Spain and showed that they can build from the middle and, in fact, be able to break those blocks on the wings. Germany has only really conceded 1 goal, which actually wasn't even given to Diani, so the only goal that was scored against Germany was with a German player. But anyway, they've been very, very tight in the back. Against the defensive discipline that they showed against France was top tier class, and so we haven't really seen them be in big trouble in the back. But again, they're going up against England, which has been very ruthless and dangerous and absolutely scary up front. Field, I would say, match up pretty evenly. I'm very excited to see how Lena Oberdorf and Kara Walsh go up against each other. Another battle that I'm very excited for is Pop and Millie Bright. Any good nation can make it into the semifinals and the quarterfinals, but you have to be a great, disciplined, unique nation to make it into the finals, and even more unique to win the entire competition. I'm not English, as you can probably tell by my accent, but there's one thing that I've consistently said over the last few years. If anything is coming home, it's the ladies to bring it. We've seen very good technical matchups, very good chess games in the quarterfinals and the semifinals, but I really think this finals is going to be a showdown compared to anything that we've seen so far. It's going to be a very close, intense game, one that you definitely don't want to miss out. Also, Wembley is sold out for that game. Definitely leave a comment below of who you think is going to be able to win that final, and overall, how do you think these players are going to match up against each other? Make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube and hit the bell button, as well as follow us on Twitter to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game. I will see you later.